Hi, this is Bria, and this is my tiny home, the Midnight Rose. Today, I'm going to talk about some of the biggest mistakes I made when purchasing this tiny home. The first mistake and biggest mistake, not checking into the zoning laws for my city. Um, when I sold the house next door, the gray one you see over to the side here, I own two lots, that lot and the lot that this tiny home sits on. I sold the house and kept the second lot and put my tiny house here, thinking that all I had to do was have the electric company get the permits and stuff for electricity and septic, and I was good to go. About 3 months after I had my tiny home here, the people that bought my house came to me and told me that a neighbor had complained and someone was doing a lawsuit against them, thinking that this was like a tiny home Airbnb. So the neighbors got that straightened out and they stopped the lawsuit against them. And I was waiting for someone to now come after me because they knew that the neighbors didn't own this tiny home. I have been here almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years in another month. So far, no one has come after me. I don't know if I've just gotten lucky or if it's because the city passed a law stating that there was no tiny homes allowed within city limits, but they passed that law um, close to a year after I had been in the tiny home. Um, so maybe they think I'm grandfathered in, but also they just may not have gone after me for some reason. This is a residential neighborhood and it is within city limits. And so in the residential neighborhoods, your house has to be of a certain size to be legal. And this, of course, is not. So far, again, I've been here for 3 years. No one has done anything yet. But I could suddenly, out of the blue, receive a notice or be fined up to $1,000 a day for having my tiny home here. I'm hoping they won't do that because I don't have the money to put my tiny home somewhere else. One of the main reasons that I wanted to put it here on my own land was so that I didn't have to pay the fees that they charge in some of the tiny home and RV campgrounds. In my area, I've checked into pricing and they charge between $400 and $700 a month just to park there. That is definitely not in my budget. When I purchased this tiny home and moved into it, I immediately quit my job that I had been at for 15 years. Um, the job was highly stressful, and that was one of the main reasons that I went tiny, was to get rid of this stressful job. And I was just miserable working 6 days a week and coming home to a huge house with only me living in it. It had 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, an office, screen porch, a large deck, and I never went in any of the rooms or used any of the rooms. So I've been much happier since I went tiny. I'm currently just doing gig work for Walmart, doing shopping for people and dropping the groceries off at their house. It pays all the bills that I have, but it's not really enough to save up money towards purchasing another piece of land that does allow tiny houses, outside of city limits, unrestricted land. So I may have to go back to working the 9 to 5 job, which is not really something that I wanted to do. I like the freedom of being able to work when I want, I want to sleep in, I can sleep in. There's no set schedule saying you have to be at work at this time. So, mistake number two was my decorating of the tiny home interior and maximizing the space, the 128 square foot. I immediately bought cheap futon bed and some little cabinets or whatever, and that was it. I thought, okay, I'm set. And after being in the tiny home for probably about 6 months, the layout, it just wasn't working for me. The futon bed was uncomfortable. I ended up redoing the interior probably about a total of 6 times. I went to a loft bed, I went to platform bed, a day bed with drawers, um, and I found that the one that's most comfortable for me is the way I have it laid out now, which is just a simple day bed. I can store things underneath if I need to. So I ended up wasting a huge sum of money buying furniture over and over again, and until I got the way that I wanted it inside. So my advice is really plan your interior layout to maximize your space, because when you're living in something this tiny, you need to maximize everything, and you need to make sure that you've downsized to where your stuff's going to fit in there comfortably without being overcrowded. What made it a little easier for me is when I sold my house, I decided, except for my clothing and just a couple little knickknacks, I sold the house furnished down to the silverware and the drawers. Even the Christmas tree and lights are still in the attic over next door. And it made it a little bit simpler to just purge everything all at once instead of little by little. I just got rid of it all. That was it, done with. Another mistake I made was placing my tiny home directly underneath these large trees that are in my backyard. So when there's a storm and the wind's blowing, I get branches that fall and hit the roof all the time. There's been no actual damage yet, but I've had like 16-foot branches come down on the house, and when it hits the roof of the house, it's a metal roof. It sounds like, a car is just fallen on top of the house. The sound is really scary. I do like this location, however, because there isn't many neighbors. There's the house next to me, which is the house that I sold. It's been almost 3 years and they still have not moved to the place, so that's basically sitting empty right now. There's a house kitty corner from me, and then that is the only houses that are in view of this property. But I'm also not even a block away from the gas station, and not quite a mile to the nearest Walmart, which is where I'm working for at the moment. So the location is very convenient, but I think I would prefer to be in somewhere a little more outdoors with more of a wooded background. So I regret wasting all that money redecorating this place and not planning properly, to where I could have put that money towards a piece of property where I would have been legal to have the tiny home and have the seclusion and stuff that I prefer. I'm typically a loner. I'm more content to sit in my house by myself, watch TV, play video games, read a good book, or do some gardening. So I would definitely like a property that has a little more land that, I can do some actual gardening instead of the raised beds that I'm currently trying to work with. I definitely do not regret growing tiny. I love my tiny house. I mean, I could win the lottery and I would still live in a tiny house. Probably not as tiny as this one, but it would still be a tiny house. It would just be on maybe like a 10-acre place that I owned and had some maybe little farm animals, some goats and chickens and little things like that. Um, Kind of like a little homestead, but I don't really want to be off grid. I don't want to use a composting toilet. I want full electricity. I want my Wi-Fi. Those are things that I don't think that I could live without. So if you own a tiny home, tell me, what are the biggest things that you regret about purchasing your tiny home? Leave it in the comments below, and I will see you next time.